Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to focus on the user. This lesson in particular can be found under System Fundamentals and System in Organizations. Let's first start out with user documentation. User documentation is any document that explains how to use features and functions of a system to its end users. Making a quick analogy, if you ever put together an IKEA furniture, you have indeed already encountered end user documentation. The pieces that come in the box are part of a super complex system, which is, well, extremely hard, impossible to build without a simple and concise documentation. Now, under user documentation, we also have internal and external documentation. Internal documentation is, well, as the name already suggests, only for internal use. And this is the explanation of the source code. This is, well, explaining what the code is doing to the developers. And this is important because in a team of developers, each one of them has different ways of writing code, and therefore explaining what the code is doing is important so others can quickly understand, okay, this bunch of code is doing this, and blah blah blah. So this usually includes relevant comments, usually after writing a couple lines of code. In plain English writes, okay, my code is serving this purpose and is affecting database X, for example. Also, using meaningful variable names is important. Not using X, Y, and Z, but for example, dog age, something meaningful which can be identified quickly. Also, an appropriate code indentation and structure. Now, as for the external documentation, this is written for the end user, aka client, and usually consists of user guides, software requirements, and design and feature implementations. Well, why is user documentation even important? Users are not developers. They do not have the knowledge that the developers have, so there must be a document which is kept simple, detailed, and systematic to ensure that users are able to use the system to full capacity. Now, as for providing the user documentation, there are a couple of different methods. These are the main three. Starting with integrated user assistance. This is when the files are supplied together with the system and they can usually be called up with a button in the system. Here I have a screenshot of PowerPoint, and in PowerPoint, in the PowerPoint application, there is a division called Help, and in the division called Help, there is a button called Help. And clicking this button, we get further information on how to use features and many other stuff they have. And this is the integrated user assistant. We also have the online support. This is a special web service hosted by the system developer to provide user documentation. So, in other words, this is a website which contains documentation about the product. And here is a screenshot of the PowerPoint documentation website where we can also search for features and get the same information we get here. And then the most legacy of them all, printed manuals. These are manuals that come along when purchasing the system, and well, nobody uses it anymore because they are firstly against the environment and most importantly expensive. Much cheaper is just a PDF file. And finally, we have the different methods of delivering user training, also extremely important. Training users in using a new system is very important as productivity greatly depends on how familiar they are with a system. There are, again, different ways of doing it. These are the main two, which is self-instruction. Users can learn by themselves, provided they have the right material to do so. And also, we have formal classes as we know from school, the students sit in the table and there is an instructor up front explaining how the system works, and if we have questions we can ask it in real time and blah blah blah. That's how we know it from school, right? And those are the main two methods of delivering it. And well, this was everything. This is the resources I used, and I hope I helped you in some way. Bye bye.